Spoiler warning, spoilers for Deltarune chapters 1 and 2, and possible spoilers for future chapters. Do not watch this video unless you've played Deltarune up to chapter 2, or you do not care about spoilers. Hey, you may have noticed that my voice has changed. This is because I am using an AI voice for narrating my videos. This is because I do not like how recordings of my voice sound, and also in order to keep out background noise, so you can more easily focus on what I'm saying. This is mostly off topic, but there are a set of equipable items that you cannot attain as of Deltarune chapter 2. I will go into each of them, and what role I'm sure they will play. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share for more content. Every view means the world to me. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Without further ado, let's start. The purpose of the pure crystal is unknown, but it does have a description that reads, "The shadow purified by the cat." We know that we have the former court mage of the card kingdom, Seem, who is knowledgeable about a great many things. They are most likely the cat the description refers to. As for the shadow part, we already have the shadow crystals, which you get as rewards for defeating Jebel and Spamton Neo, and presumably any future secret bosses. As for the properties of the shadow crystals, looking through them drives Darkeners insane. They let Chris see through their hands, they show Chris Susie coldly glaring when in fact she's warmly smiling, and using them in Card Kingdom or in Cyber World shows their respective Light World counterparts, those being Jerson's classroom and the library computer lab. If you attempt to discard them, the game will stop you. Also, if used in Castle Town, they won't work, and they only show one vision per user. With the properties of the shadow crystal now known, I feel like they show a version of reality where the only existing dark world is Castle Town, the only natural dark world. Without the other dark worlds, Susie's character development would not happen, hence her cold glare, and it's possible that Chris owes their continued existence to the dark worlds. Perhaps their biological parents met in a dark world. Perhaps healing magic in a dark world saved their life when they were little. Either possibility is likely. Also, it's likely that Spamton and Jebel went insane as they peered through their respective shadow crystals, and realized that their worlds, everything and everyone they know, is not supposed to exist. Peering through shadow crystals might also explain Seem's nihilism. However, the shadow crystals have a very curious connection to W.D. Gaster. Gaster has holes in his hands, like what Chris imagines when they look through the shadow crystal in the light world. Also, each of their holders are connected to Gaster. Seem says that Jebel met a strange someone, heavily implied to be Gaster, who told him everything is a game, making him start to say bizarre things that didn't completely make sense but didn't completely not make sense either, believing that the world was just a game. As for Spamton, he became a big shot after getting advice from a mysterious benefactor also implied to be Gaster who helped him become a big shot, but then he stopped helping Spamton, resulting in the salesman's eviction from the Queen's mansion. And when one of his former friends tried to check up on him, he tried to answer the phone, and got nothing but garbage noise. If you try to call your phone in the dark world, you get nothing but garbage noise, and it plays the soundbite for Undertale's entry number 17, which is the one written by Gaster, and is more likely than not about dark worlds. I feel like Seem has a resistance to the effects of shadow crystals, which grant Darkeners great power at the price of their sanity. This allowed them to imprison Jebel in the past and will most likely allow them to purify shadow crystals. The pure crystals can be used to craft the Twisted Sword, the next unused item. Let's go. The Twisted Sword is crafted from a thorn ring and a pure crystal given to Malias. As a sword, only Chris can wield it, and it boosts their attack by 16 and puts them in a trance. Due to having a downwards arrow as its icon, it possibly is able to break trances. If you need a recap of what the trance status effect does, caused by equipping the thorn ring, it halves the TP count for spells and drains health. It cannot drain health below 55, which may seem arbitrary until you convert it into Roman numerals. LV. As in what you are increasing by committing murder, or manipulating no L into committing murder. Now here's where things get very, very interesting. The thorn ring is recognized as a torture device by Susie, and Spamton, who we've already discussed has ties to Gaster, has multiple copies of the thorn ring. As for how you get the thorn ring, it is necessary on the Snowgrave route, as you must kill every enemy with Noel's ice shock before fighting Berdly to get the thorn ring. However, you must not proceed on the route by not giving it to Noel, if you want to use it to create the Twisted Sword, or Noel will join the party again. My theory on the Twisted Sword is that it's designed to counteract Gaster's power, with the thorn ring being most likely a Gaster invention. He did earn a doctorate, after all, due to Spamton's ties with Gaster, and the pure crystal being a result of Seam's purification of the shadow crystal, which is heavily tied to Gaster. The Twisted Sword perhaps uses the pure crystal inside it to counteract the thorn ring's powers. Perhaps the anti-trance of the Twisted Sword gives Chris automatic regeneration, by a set amount or a percentage of their HP, after every turn, so it's not too broken, but doubles their TP usage. This is the inverse of the thorn ring, which halves Noel's TP usage, allowing her to cast Snowgrave, but drains her HP. Perhaps to get the best ending of Deltarune, you must push your friends to the brink, but not across the event horizon. Like, get Noel to kill, but narrowly avert the cold-blooded murder of Berdly. That's enough about the Twisted Sword. The Everybody weapon can be given to any character. I feel like it was used as a placeholder and kept in the files. The existence of these unused items in the files feels like a tease, as Toby clearly learned from the datamine of Undertale. Hence him hiding things in the game's files as Easter eggs for dataminers. I really don't have that much to say about the Everybody weapon. This next one is strange, as the Shadow Mantle does not even exist in the game's files. However, Seam has mentioned it, so I don't expect it to be a throwaway gag. If you show Seam Jevil and Spamton's shadow crystals, they tell you about the Shadow Mantle, which is an old scrap of cloth that would allow the Fun Gang to defeat the third shadow crystal holder. Seam intends to give the party the Shadow Mantle, but is unable to find it, and wonders if it's been taken. With Toby, he's the kind of guy to make sure every line has significance. As for who took the Shadow Mantle, I feel like it's Spade King, as Seam being the court mage in exile would allow him to confiscate it during his takeover. Also, his cape cloaks his body in shadow, and when he's defeated, it flies off in a Lepidopteran manner. So, we know it has mysterious properties. I'm sure that the Shadow Mantle will be very important in beating Chapter 3's Shadow Crystal Holder. If my theory about the Shadow Crystal Holder of Chapter 3 being a parody of Woody is true, perhaps it's worn as a shawl, to fit in with the theme. I don't think it will be absolutely necessary, by any means, as Seam is known to be quite pessimistic and nihilistic. The Shadow Mantle enabling Green Soul mode, as speculated, and even shown for some fan-made boss battles is something I'm not counting on, as I feel like Toby wouldn't be the guy to code an item that changes soul mode, as that seems like too much of a hassle. Also, we didn't need an item to enable yellow soul mode for Spamton Neo. As for what the Shadow Mantle is most likely going to do, it's probably going to give a resistance to the Shadow Crystal boss attacks. It's most likely going to work like the Mannequin and Frayed Bowtie, which reduce the damage from Spamton Neo's attacks. Combining them together halves damage from Spamton Neo's attacks, trivializing the fight. The Shadow Mantle might be the only item that can do that, or it may not be, who knows. An interesting, alternate theory of the Shadow Mantle's function is that it's needed to trigger the Shadow Crystal Holder encounter, due to it countering petrification. It's a case of exact words if that were the case, as you can't defeat that Shadow Crystal Holder if you can't fight them in the first place. Speaking of mantles, there's an unobtainable mantle in the game's files. The Sky Mantle is a fluorescent cape that halves damage from electric and holy attacks, which may or may not be related to the Shadow Mantle. Just the existence of the Elec/Holy pair tells us that an important boss is going to be using attacks of that elemental pair, similar to the Puppet/Cat element pair attacks that Spamton Neo uses, that the Mannequin and Frayed Bowtie defend against. The Sky Mantle may or may not be related to the Shadow Mantle, but what I do know is that it is going to be an item that will trivialize an upcoming boss encounter. While the Mannequin and Frayed Bowtie reduce damage from Spamton Neo's attacks, and the Shadow Mantle will protect against the attacks of the Chapter 3 Shadow Crystal Holder, it's most likely going to be Chapter 4's Shadow Crystal boss. However, I'm not going to rule out the possibility that it might be useful for trivializing the Chapter 4 Dark Fountain Guardian. It could protect against one boss attacks, but not the other, or it might protect from both bosses' attacks. Toby is totally the kind of guy to create an item that feels like it will save you against the next Shadow Crystal boss, but psych. That item does nothing against the Shadow Crystal boss, but it's more useful for another boss. The existence of a holy element also hints that there will be a dark world taking place inside the church, which has remained conspicuously inaccessible, just like the computer lab before Chapter 2. I'm sure it will be in Chapter 4. As each chapter corresponds to a day, with Chapter 1 being Thursday, Chapter 2 being Friday, and most likely Chapter 3 being Saturday. This means that Chapter 4 will most likely be Sunday. And when do people go to church? Either there's a fight with Alvin Boone, who is a likely knight candidate, but I feel like a knight fight is saved for Chapter 5, or someone else. My lead theory on Chapter 4's Dark Fountain Guardian will be Bishop, the leader of a Titan-worshipping cult. And it makes sense for a priest, especially one once tasked with averting the roaring, to use holy magic. Perhaps during your battle with Bishop, they start throwing lightning at you like the Greek god Zeus, while battling the fear the knight put in their heart that led them off their former righteous path. The next items I'd like to talk about is the unused consumables. First, there's the Giga Salad, which heals you by 4 HP, unless you're Noel, who's healed by a massive 90 HP. It's a healing item tailored to the ungulate palate. There's also the favorite sandwich, the most powerful healing item out there. It heals by a gargantuan 500 HP, which is far more than enough to heal anybody to max. I feel like Toby is saving it for a future chapter and making it a one-use item. Another item is the Life Dew, which revives an ally. It's more or less a weaker revive mint, so we're probably not going to see it anytime soon. Another unused item is the Java Cookie, which heals by 90 HP, but heals Chris and the Thrash Machine by 100 HP unless the Thrash Machine pops up again. It's most likely going to stay unused. There is also the Tension Max, which does exactly what it sounds like. I'm thinking that it might be a rare steal, best saved for an especially hard boss encounter. The last unused consumable item is the Revive Bright. It's a more potent revive dust that fully heals all downed allies, and heals all active allies by 50 HP. It has a chance of being used in the future. The Mouse Token is an unused armor that provides defense against the unused element 7. Perhaps like the Shadow Mantle, it hints at a future encounter where it may come in handy. I'm saying this as I didn't use the Frayed Bowtie and Mannequin to cheese the Spamton Neo fight, because it helps I already challenged Jebel. The Trefoil is an unused weapon for Chris. Its Light World equivalent is the Lucky Pencil, and it raises the money you get from each encounter by 5%. I'm sure that Toby might implement it as a way to help with money grinding, while limiting Chris' attack power enough to make it balanced. As money grinding methods can get pretty up in RPGs. The Cheer Scarf is a scarf, so it's an Ralsei exclusive weapon. It gives you more TP from crits, so it could come in handy as a balanced weapon for combat-oriented routes. The Spike Shackle is an unused armor that increases attack by 3 and defense by 1. Its stats are too low, and it doesn't do much else, so I feel like it's gonna go unused. The dark gold band is an armor that's oddly enough, a Chris exclusive. With each chapter, its sell price increases, so it's possible that you get it in chapter 3, and it has appropriate stats for that point in the game, but stats creep up, so you could run it in a challenge run, or sell it in the end game for a fortune. The frayed bowtie can be sold from Spamton. It increases attack, defense, and magic by 1 each, and lowers damage from puppet/cat attacks by 15%. However, it's advertised as increasing defense by a whopping 50. Its age and storage conditions seem to have degraded its defensive value, having been stored by a madman in a junkyard. Susie will refuse to wear it. The frayed bowtie, sold by Swatch, seems to be the same item as the Big Shot Bowtie, except that the Big Shot Bowtie trades that puppet/cat resist and attack boost for an extra defense point, and can be fused with a tension bit to make a tension bow. The Big Shot Bowtie has had its brand name cut off, due to its association with Spamton, as after he fell from riches back into rags, the brand name has been cut off. Here's my theory on the Big Shot Bowtie: it will grant you an extra 50 defense, but only if it's perfectly intact. As the ones that Spamton sells you have been fished from the trash and are frayed, and the ones Swatch sells you have had their brand cut off, they have lost almost all their potency. So unfortunately, you cannot get a Big Shot Bowtie that turns whomever wears it into a monstrosity as bulky as a Gargonicle wearing a Toxapex as a helmet. If you've played competitive Pokémon, you will get the idea of the grade of defense an intact Big Shot Bowtie would grant you. It's not the only interesting paraphernalia that Spamton can sell you. The broken sword is a completely unusable item that cannot be fixed by Malias that Spamton sells you. There is one possibility: what you need to fix it, you cannot obtain yet. Perhaps when it's fixed, it will be very powerful, or at the very least, a bragging rights reward. Or there might be a boss that will recognize it as part of a legendary weapon, if you have it in your inventory, perhaps with an act that lets you show it to them if you have it, when you encounter them, and will freak out, perhaps fearing that even a fragment of that legendary weapon can harm them. Or they think you broke it, not knowing you got it from a scammer. Either way, the boss either is sparable immediately, or their attack and defense is reduced severely, making a boss that otherwise makes Jebel look like a cakewalk into a joke. Or it's just a complete joke item designed to trick gullible players into wasting their money. And that's all the unused items, and all I have to say about them. I remind you, please like, subscribe, and share for more content. Every view means so much to me. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Tyson out.
When the light is running low and the shadows start to grow, and the places that you know seem like fantasy, there's a light inside your soul